Hey everyone, welcome back to Front Row 2019. We're here with the final leg of the race. We have up next Chris Do from the future. I know you guys are super pumped about this. So even before we jump into him real quick, I just want to say if you guys want to ask him a question, because we're going to be doing a bunch of Q&A, exclamation mark, Q, then your question, get it going right now so I can definitely see it. So let's do that. We're going to jump in straight to Chris. I don't think he needs any more of an explanation. So let's jump into the call with him and let's get this show on the road. Hey Chris, how we going?
I'm doing good. How are you, Ryan?
Doing fantastic. I'm just going to give you a quick introduction for the one person sitting under a rock who doesn't know who you are. You're the CEO of The Future, a design mentor, educator to many, but most importantly, you're on an ambitious goal to impact 1 billion lives, which I think is absolutely amazing. So yeah, first off, thank you for joining us today. We really do appreciate that, and I know that so many people want to ask you questions. So I've got a couple of questions, predetermined questions here that I've already got sorted. And then we're just going to jump into a bunch of live Q&A with our community because I know they're very eager to get going. So let's jump straight into it if you're ready to go.
I am ready to go.
Fantastic. All right, question number one is, how can I build an engaged audience online?
Very good question. I think what we have to do is we have to switch from what we understand as marketing and social media, which is really broadcasting one direction, is creating a lot of noise, just talking about me all the time, and switching over to what community am I serving? What are their needs? What are their pain points and challenges? What are their dreams, their hopes, their fears? And try to create something that they would find to be useful, helpful, or at least entertaining. If
Yep.
you can do that, you can start to engage in an audience. Now, you'll see the vast number of accounts on social media, whether it be an individual, a small company, or big corporation, really is about just pushing content one direction. Social media has this incredible opportunity for us to have a conversation. It's a two-way thing. So you should, first of all, listen to what your community needs, respond to it by giving them what you think they need, and then adjust as you go.
Yep, absolutely. Just on that, you are obviously dominant on social media, and especially with your own personal stuff, especially on Instagram at the moment, that's been blowing up. So how much time are you spending personally per week on building that engaged audience?
Yeah, so the use of carousels has been fairly new to me, and I have to say that I had a guest, Michael Janda, on our show, and
Yep.
while I was doing a little research on him and trying to understand like what he's been up to, I noticed that he's been growing his audience really fast. And I swipe through his carousels, and I think, and a light bulb moment goes off. Like, Michael is using Instagram to teach people. He's taken essentially content from his 2 books and then have disseminated it down to like 10 slides to teach people. And I told him after the show, like, I'm going to start doing that. I did not realize you can actually use Instagram to teach people. So I started working on this. Now, my pace prior to this point in time was to post like once every 3 weeks and somehow still get a decent sized following. But then I made a commitment to myself, like, I want to try the carousels out. I think it's a great form of teaching. I have literally over 100 decks sitting on my desktop. So I'm
Yep.
going to start converting those into content. And I realized one thing, which was converting decks that you give on stage just don't work on Instagram. They have to be self-contained, they have to be self-explanatory, and they have to be able to be consumed in a very short amount of time. And so initially it took me about 8 to 10 hours to make one post. And I made a cardinal mistake, right? It is insane because that means I have no time to do anything else. I made the mistake of overproducing and not iterating. So the first couple of posts I put out, they did okay, but then I started to realize I needed to make the slides easier to consume, and the way that you structure your story, you need to lean towards the end. Like carousel slides number 8 or 9 have to be the heavy hitters, not at the front. You'll lose people right at the beginning. So I was able to cut from 8 hours to 4 hours to 3 hours. And now, depending on what kind of posts I'm making, it might take me as little as 15 minutes to put out.
Yeah, that's insane. And it goes a very long way as well. All right, awesome. Let's keep the ball moving. How can I negotiate low budget clients and how can I charge more? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, a couple of things. Before we can talk about how to negotiate low budget clients, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to attract low budget clients? Are we doing the minimal amount of work? So therefore, people who have low budgets tell their other friends, hey, work with John or Mary. They do great work and they're super affordable. So you just get more of what you're getting. And that's how many of us start out in life. So we need to make an effort to position and to market ourselves so we start to attract better clients. One of the things that you should do, and you can learn this in almost every copywriting book, which is to tell you when you write a headline, it should be self-selecting. The audience should figure out if this is right for me or if it's not right for me. This gets into positioning, meaning if you put out content that's for everyone and you say, I'm a generalist, I'm a super uber creative unicorn in the universe, you attract all kinds of people, unqualified people. When you start to say, like, I work with Fortune 100 companies, I work with companies that are fast growing $10 million plus revenue. And then all of a sudden the little mom and pops all of a sudden say, this is not right for me, I can't afford it. But here's the really cool thing. They still might call you and say, I know I can't afford you, but would you consider doing this? Because we would be willing to give you X, Y, and Z. We can give you merch, we can give you money, we can give you stock options. There's a lot of things that they might be able to offer. So your site and what you do should serve as some sort of gate or filter for who comes to you. So if you're getting a lot of these low-end leads, it's probably because you're positioned poorly. Okay, now let's say they do come and you've done all this work, because you're going to say, hey, Chris, I've done all that. My site looks amazing. It's self-selecting. I've specialized. I've picked a niche, and I'm still getting these low budget, low cheap ass clients coming at me. So here's what you do. If you know it's going to be a low budget client, you need to talk about the budget really early. Don't spend 30, 40, 50 minutes talking to a client, knowing very well when the money conversation comes up, they're going to have sticker shock and just run away. So if you know it's going to be a low budget client, which I assume is many people listening to this, you should bring up the budget right up front. Here's how you do it. Client calls, or this email exchange, you get on the phone and then they start talking about their project. You have to stop them at some point and say, you know, before we go too deep into this, I just want to make sure, because out of respect for your time and my own, I just want to make sure we have the proper budget to do some work moving forward. That would be an amount of $5,000. Is that something you can afford just to start? And like, whoa, no. I'm thinking $300. Then you're like, you know what? I'm glad I brought this up. This is not a good fit. You probably need to find somebody on Fiverr or 99 Designs or something. Go work with them. Hopefully you become successful and you realize you need more than what they can give. Give me a call back. That's how you do it.
That's it. It's easy, isn't it?
It's that easy. 1, 2, 3.
It's a massive struggle for so many people, and even I get constant DMs about it. You know, how do I charge more? How do I negotiate with these low budget clients? When really, it should be easy, but people struggle with it so much. So yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the future now, real quick, before we dive into some of our community questions. Specifically the content creation process for the future, because obviously you guys put out so much content on a bunch of different platforms. So would you just be able to give us maybe a quick insight into maybe the strategy behind the content and why you decide to put X, Y, and Z on different platforms?
Yeah, I think initially we started out on YouTube and we built other platforms to support the YouTube channel. Naturally, when you create a piece of content on YouTube, it should be evergreen content, meaning people can search and find it later, and there is no better search platform than YouTube. It makes it very easy to find as long as you title it appropriately, you include the hashtags, and you write good, decent descriptions in it. And if you add subtitles, it makes it even easier for people to find your content. But here's the problem. If you're new into the universe and you're not really great at doing thumbnails and doing clickbaity titles to draw an audience in, it's going to be a slow growing thing. So what you want to do is you want to chop down some of that content in whatever format you think. You can cut it down into podcasts. You can do 3-minute cut downs. You can do slide carousels or write a blog post. And that basically reaches a whole different audience. They may become intrigued with what the content is and then go to the evergreen content that exists on YouTube. So naturally, you're going to have to build up a Twitter account, an Instagram account, a Facebook account, and LinkedIn. And those serve as drivers to the ultimate source, which for you might be YouTube. Now, over time, we start to realize that it's becoming harder and harder to get your content noticed on YouTube just because of the proliferation of content creators. That's great. And this is where we're seeing a lot of YouTube burnout, where the effort they used to make would result in huge follows or views, and now it's not. And we're also realizing that a lot of other social platforms not owned by Google also want to be relevant. They don't want to just serve as a launch pad into something else. So they're working on their algorithm so that when you share content, it's seen. And there's no better place to do that than Instagram and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is still one of the few remaining large networks where you can get organic reach without paying for it. You noticed that a while ago, Facebook would make you pay. They're basically saying, I don't care if you're friends, if your content is relative to them that we're not going to show unless you pay us. That's the exception, is if your content is super viral.
Yeah.
Then obviously everybody's sharing organically. This is why we build up different pieces of content on different platforms to serve our audiences and their appetite and consumption.
What do you think about platforms such as like Behance and Dribbble? Do they like, because there's obviously some positives and negatives to it, I guess, in terms of like actually gaining clients and whatnot. So what are your thoughts on using those design orientated platforms to actually scale a brand and scale a design business?
I love those platforms. I know a friend of mine who runs a design business. I think he has 7 or 8 employees. He's doing really well for himself. And his main lead gen source is Behance. Basically, he posts projects that are beautiful. He writes case studies for him, and they're amazing photography. And because of that, he gets a lot of leads. Now, of course, many of them are unqualified, being that they're too low budget.
Yeah.
But then the cool thing is, once you're on Behance, you may get one of those Behance certifications, like Work of the Week or whatever they put up, badges. And that pops you up on top of the search. And then somebody else from a blog might see it, write about you, and then you get free PR out of that. I think for creative people, especially if you do something visual, Behance, Dribbble, those kind of portfolio sites are great. They're fantastic. Definitely do that. It's not a one or, it's this and that strategy. And if you do that, I think you're gonna have pretty good opportunity of finding clients.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, I reckon we're ready to jump into some questions. So live chat.
Okay. Oh, those weren't the questions?
Yeah. That was just some stuff I was thinking about.
Okay.
So live chat, if you want to ask some more questions, !Q, and then your question for Chris, so I can see it and ask him himself. All right, the first question that I see coming in here. As the CEO of your business, what scares you?
I think this thing that scares me the most, that the decisions that I make impact more than just myself. They impact my team, they impact my family, and they will ultimately impact the audience that we're trying to reach. And that's a big responsibility. And there's something that's strange that happens, like when you're relatively unknown, you do work, there's no expectation or obligation for you to do anything. As you become more known, which is the goal that we're trying to do here, because the more people that learn about us can learn that we have resources and tools to help them succeed. People start to take ownership over you and to say like, oh, you shouldn't say this, you should do this. And I think, when did we agree to sign up for that? I'm still who I am. I still get to make what I want. And don't I have my own autonomy and my own voice? So you cross over, and I understand that's a responsibility. I don't want to just shrug that off, but it does become a little strange.
Yeah, for sure. How do you build trust in an environment that does not value design? So for example, a country, for example, I know that India, from what I've heard from Indian designers, clients don't value design that highly over there. So how do you build trust in that environment and I guess get paid for what you're worth in those type of countries?
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question back, which is, in a relationship that you've had, what has somebody else done to earn your trust? Because we expect it, but we don't give it. And it's kind of an interesting paradox here. When you go into a store, any kind of store or service, what do you feel like the person on the other side is trying to do? And how does that make you feel? I'm gonna run a scenario. If you walk around in a mall and there's like little boutiques and retail fashion stuff, and you walk by, as soon as you walk in and cross the threshold of the store, what does the salesperson do? In many instances, they start coming at you and offering all kinds of stuff. They spend almost no time just studying you, giving you your space, and even asking you questions like, if you need help, let me know. What are you interested in today? Perhaps I can help you find it. And then they back off. Or are they really pushy? And we understand that the salespeople are really pushy. It is intimidating for some people. It makes us not even want to walk in the store.
Yeah.
It also makes us feel like, I think you're only interested in making a sale and you could care less what it is that you're doing for me, which is really problematic. Now, we can all relate to something like that. Now think back to your last client interaction and ask yourself, how did I behave? Because we spend too much time thinking about how we feel, what our needs and wants are, and we spend almost no time thinking about what our clients want.
That's it.
Right? So if we flip the lens and look at ourselves from the viewpoint of the client, are we there to serve them? Do we want to take the time to get to know them? Are we asking them calibrated, open-ended questions to help them think through a problem and to ease the fear of making a decision? I don't know. And that's pretty much where you have to be in the dialogue. If you want to earn trust, you have to do things that people view as trustworthy. You have to, instead of selling, you have to start serving.
That's it. How do you position yourself to get clients with bigger budgets?
Okay, people like to be around people that are like them.
Yep.
So if there's a really big client, they have certain ways of operating. They have a team, they have marketing officers, they have divisions in the company, and they like to work with people like them. And when you are a one-person operation, you seem really risky to them unless you're an artist and you're really well known. So what you want to do at the minimum is you want to adopt the language that businesses use, so that at least the language is familiar to them. When you talk about things that only designers and creatives care about, you're sending them a signal. Inadvertently, you're sending them a signal to say, I have no idea what your business is about. I really don't care about it. All I care is about the things that I care about. And then they're going to ghost on you. So stop talking about specific colors or printing techniques or brushes that you use. Stop talking about all the granular detail. Step back and ask them, what's a big business problem we're trying to solve today? Are we trying to increase awareness? Are we trying to improve conversion? What are we trying to do? And then from there, at least you have a shot at saying, or creating the impression in the person's mind. I think this designer, I sold short at the beginning of this call. Now I realize they're actually really smart. They're asking really good business questions. I think they are deserving of me giving them some credibility. And then the relationship built from there. So you have to start to do things that big businesses do. So I would recommend for a lot of people, if you don't have a lot of time, to look up the book, The Visual MBA, or 101 Things I Learned in Business School. They're really good at like distilling information. So at least you have some sense of what they're talking about.
For sure. What's one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
Get on social media on day one.
That it? That easy?
Do you want me to expand on it? I mean, I would.
I mean, we can leave it there. I think that kind of covers it. I mean, it's fairly obvious why. Yeah.
I mean, because whenever platforms emerge, that's when they're most kind to you as the creator. They want to support you because they need to get adoption going. Yep. Once a platform is matured, it becomes very difficult to get established. And you can see some of the early pioneers in YouTube, they're still doing well and they have tens of millions of followers.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say are your 3 pillars for success? So if you had to define success within 3 keywords, what would they be?
I think one of them would be personal growth and development.
Yeah.
Taking care of your team and your loved ones, and trying to improve the human condition.
I think it sums it up nicely. Also, I'm just got a couple more questions coming in, guys. If you want to ask more questions, we won't keep you for too much.
How are they asking you right now? Is it on YouTube or where?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. So we're live on YouTube. We've been basically live for the past 4 or 5 hours. I've basically had about 300 viewers actively watching, which is fantastic. So what they have to do in chat, type !Q and then your question, and then that appears on my end. So we'll just get a couple more questions and then we'll let you go, Chris, because we know you are a busy dude. I'm just waiting for my teammates to put some more questions in. Here we go. Here's a few more coming in real quick. How do you deal with difficult clients? It's fairly broad.
Yeah.
But like, what's your go-to strategy? So if a client's just not working for you, do you just fire them? Yeah. Or like, how do you deal with them?
All right, let's put clients into 2 categories. Category 1 is truly difficult clients that are self-serving, that are really inconsiderate, rude, and don't love creative people. I actually find that there's a very small percentage of those people. Let's put everybody else in a different category, that we misunderstand them, so we label them as being difficult, when truly it's like we don't know how to communicate. So instead of taking responsibility, we blame them. In my career, in 24 years of running a business, I've only had a handful, literally like less than 5 clients that I would categorize as being difficult, that they seem to be almost con people, like con men or con women, where they have a different dialogue and a different reality than the one that I see. So that means that if there's only a few of those people in 24 years of doing business, then we have to take responsibility for seeing or at least noticing why is it that we bring this out in people? Why are they being difficult? And usually difficulty signals to me they're asking for revisions or they don't like what you've created. Okay, that's usually a symptom, right? What people would say. So they don't like my work or they're going to make a change later on. To me, that's a symptom of you not either having clear definitions before you start, not having clear communication while you're doing the work, and not creating space so that people feel safe to share with you their opinion and point of view. At the end of the day, we know this. They have paid you to do something for them that they see to be valuable. So if you do something that's valuable to you, that only you see as helpful, that's a breakdown in communication. You have misaligned goals, and potentially you have an ulterior motive. And I do want to say this, and it's going to be a little bit controversial for your audience. I find that many creatives are very self-serving, and they only use client work as a means to support their own artwork. And this becomes a problem for a lot of people. So because the clients don't like the thing that you want to do, you're like, blah, difficult clients, they're evil, they're stupid, and why are you trying to ruin my work? Why are clients the bane of my existence? Well, you have to think, the last time you commissioned somebody to do something, was it important to you that they did what you wanted, or was it important for you for them to do like self-expression? So if you go into a tailor and you need your pant leg hemmed up and you want a high cuff because you want to show some ankle, and then you come back and like, you know what, I dropped it down a little bit because that's what we want and that's on trend right now. How does that make you feel? And furthermore, when you have a customer service complaint, you're like, you know what, that's not what I asked for. And they're like, you know, why are you trying to ruin my business? Why, you don't know anything. And if that's the way you behave, well, you're not going to get a lot of clients.
Did you always know you wanted to be a designer?
No.
No.
I grew up as an immigrant, first generation immigrant to America. The idea of being a creative human being was really not part of the nighttime discussions about what do you want to do when you grow up. That was not really part of that conversation. Like most immigrant families, you try to do things that are viewed as pillars of the community. You're going to be a doctor, dentist, lawyer, accountant, something respectable, an engineer. And for a long time, I kind of repressed the idea of being a creative person. I wasn't really aware that design was a thing in terms of a profession until I was about 17 years old and I met a graphic designer. And that moment changed my life.
That's awesome. A couple more tips, questions for you, then we'll let you go. Any tips for making a good portfolio?
Well, that's a pretty broad one.
It is. Maybe just like give a couple of tips. Yeah. Tip
number one is to use restraint. I think people that are new in creativity want to show the world everything they can do. Like, I know how to use 15 typefaces and 44 colors. I know how to use a deboss, emboss, die cut, laser etched thing. And they put all of that in one design, one expression. It just becomes too much. It looks like visual vomit to me. You'll notice that some of the best designs, the designs that have been able to transition through time, that have lasted, tend to be simpler design that seems to be more in restraint, and it's not about what you put on, it's what you leave off that matters to me. So if you want to have design that lasts through years, you have to start thinking about the typefaces that you're using and the colors. And it's good to jump on trends. Somebody does something, we think it's successful, we want to do the same thing. And it's good to be mindful of trends, but then some trends are fads and then they quickly date your work. If you want to attract clients that want to hire you or prospective employers, try to do something that they think is sophisticated, that shows restraint and a great degree of sensibility. Here's an example. Here's an analogy for you. You know that if you go to a really high-end restaurant, they usually prepare a really great dish through having meticulous ingredients with a very light hand, and then they present it very cleanly. Conversely, if you go to one of these microwave restaurants, what do they call that, chef microwave or whatever, you'll see that it's covered in heavy sauces. The ingredients are not properly sourced. It's been frozen, and it just looks like a glop of, like a mess of things, right? And essentially that's what you do. So when I look at portfolios, I look at a lot of portfolios, it's more the former than, or it's just like, it's so messy and there's so much stuff in there. And I think you just don't have good taste. I don't want somebody to do that for my client. I don't want somebody to do that for me. And that's essentially what you're doing.
That's awesome. Last question before we finish up. What does your average day look like? Or you might not even have an average day. Like, is every day different, or is it like just like core things that happen throughout the day every day?
Mm-hmm. I have a pretty rigid schedule, and it's something I've adopted in the last couple of months, and it's really helped me up my productivity. And I'll tell you exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Monday, I dedicate just for writing. Tuesdays is for reading. Okay. And Wednesday is for client meetings and for some production. Thursday and Fridays for peer production, meaning this is when I'm going to make content for YouTube where I'm available to the team. But that's the general schedule. Saturday is family day.
Yep.
So that this is all about, like, what do we want to do? We want to eat ice cream. We want to watch a movie, Avengers 55. Let's do it. That's what I want to do. We want to go hiking, tent, whatever my family wants to do. That's what we do. And then Sunday for me is self-care day. Self-care day is just for you to indulge in whatever it is that you want to do. So this is when I'm like, you know what? I need to hit the gym. I gotta do a mud mask, or I gotta get a massage, or whatever it is that I want to do. This is just for me, and I feel zero guilt. When you have clarity over what it is that you need to do, and you prevent context switching, your productivity will go up by quite a bit. I'm reading this new book to me, from Peter Drucker, The Effective Executive. And in it, he says that one of the most powerful things that we have is our time. It's the most valuable resource.
That's it.
So what you need to do is to gather as much discretionary time together to make the biggest chunk of the discretionary time that you can have, and steal back your time. So that means you have to make some hard decisions about things that are contributing to your goals, or things that are distracting you from your goals. Now, let me get a little bit more granular about this, because I think this is probably what people might have wanted to hear. I get up when the sun comes up, because mostly I'm a light sleeper. So that means, depending on the time of year and which way the sun is hitting my window, I get up about 6 to 7 a.m. And I get up and just naturally, I don't set an alarm. I get up. I do social media. I'm usually on it for about 30 minutes to an hour, just answering questions on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever it is I can, I try to answer. And usually what happens there is people either want to ask a clarifying question, which is a good sign for me, because it means I didn't do a good enough job communicating. And so I make some notes about that, so that when I go and give a talk on that, I can improve, or I'll just revise what it is that I wrote. 2, people want to fight with you, which is also interesting, because I get to a whole different point of view. And that's very interesting to me, because in responding to it, they get me to clarify my own position. Every once in a while, somebody will argue with me and they actually have a superior position. If that's the case, then that moving forward is the position that I adopt. I read a quote this morning that my wife shared. It says, if you don't have the ability to change your mind, you're not, I'm messing this up. If you can't change your mind, you're not using it well. Yeah. Something like that. So for me, it's like, I have strong opinions, but I hold them loosely. If somebody has a better opinion, great. And I say opinion, not a fact, because it's not fact. It's just my thought. So I crush through the day, usually by making content most of the days, or reading and writing. So my notebooks, and there's pads of paper, there's giant stacks of paper everywhere around me, books that I've read and books that I need to read. So I'm always juggling all those things. And that's kind of my day. And I usually end up eating dinner about 7 or 8 o'clock. And then I go right back at it until I feel tired. I usually feel tired, if I'm not jet lagged, around 12 to 1 a.m.
Yep.
I just listen to my body. When I'm ready to work and I feel inspired, I work. And when I'm tired, I just stop doing it. I just go to sleep.
That's awesome. Chris, you're the man. Thank you so much for joining us. Just before you head off, for the one person watching on stream who isn't following you, where can we follow you online and find you?
Okay, great. Thank you very much for queuing that up. You can follow me pretty much on every single platform. Most people know about us on YouTube. We have almost 600,000 subscribers. It's at The Future Is Here, and the future is spelled without an E. So just remember, drop the E, go, and that's The Future. And you can also find us, The Future Is Here, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. I have a personal account, which I write different pieces of content, and it's just me. People ask it all the time, who's making all this stuff? It's just me. And I'm at The Chris Do, and that's D-O.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Chris, thank you so much. You are the man. Keep creating awesome stuff, and I'm sure we can speak very soon again in the future.
Thanks, Ryan.
Awesome. Have a great day. See ya.